Nola Dempsey didn't mean to steal someone's seat, she just wanted a quiet place to eat her soggy salad before her next client bailed on her again. The cafe was packed, every table taken, save for one with a single chair left, at a long, rustic wooden table meant for sharing. She hesitated only a second before sliding into the last seat, mumbling a quick, "Sorry, just need to sit for a sec," without even looking at the person beside her. "No problem," came a deep voice, smooth like it belonged on the radio at midnight. She looked up. Tall, clean-shaven. Dark brown hair slightly tousled. Gray suit, tailored to perfection. He had an effortless calm about him and a face that didn't belong in a shared table cafe, it belonged on a GQ cover. But he wasn't looking at her like he knew that. In fact, he was watching her salad like it might attack him. "That doesn't look like food." He nodded toward her wilted greens and mystery dressing. Nola rolled her eyes and stabbed a cucumber. "It's called broke lunch, very exclusive," he laughed, and something about the way his eyes crinkled made her chest tighten. "Mind if I offer an upgrade?" "What, you carrying steak in that briefcase?" He grinned. "No, but I know the owner, I can get you something edible." "I'm good." She looked back at her sad salad. "Thanks, though." He watched her a beat too long. "You always this stubborn?" She raised an eyebrow. "You always this nosy?" He laughed again, and she tried not to notice how nice his teeth were, or how his shirt had cufflinks, or how his hands looked like they hadn't done anything manual since birth. "I'm Ford," he said eventually. "Nola, nice to meet you, Nola." They sat in silence after that, not awkward silence, more like a truce. She ate. He typed something on a sleek silver laptop. He looked important, or maybe just rich. Either way, she was not getting involved, except she couldn't stop sneaking glances at him. And every time she did, she caught him doing the same. When she stood to leave, he closed his laptop. "Hey, Nola," he said, standing too. "Can I buy you a real lunch tomorrow?" She blinked. "Are you always this forward?" "Only when I know I'll regret not asking." And maybe it was the way he said it, like he actually meant it, or maybe it was the fact that she'd forgotten how long it had been since someone looked at her like she was interesting. She gave a half smile. "Fine. But I picked the place," he nodded. "Text me." "I don't have your number." He reached into his jacket pocket and handed her a sleek black business card. No title, no company, just his name and a number. "See you tomorrow, Nola." She watched him walk out, his back straight, his steps unhurried. Confident, like he owned the street. She didn't know yet that he did. The next day, she picked a tiny Italian place tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. She wasn't sure why she picked it, maybe to test him, see if he flinched at non-white tablecloths. But Ford showed up right on time in a dark coat and a smile and didn't flinch once. "This place smells amazing," he said, sliding into the booth across from her. She eyed him suspiciously. "You eat anywhere that doesn't have a wine cellar," Ford laughed. "I like real places. And real people." She didn't know how to answer that, so she just opened the menu. They ordered pasta and breadsticks and wine that came in stubby little glasses. And for the next hour they talked, about everything and nothing. She told him about her freelance design gigs, the nightmare clients, the late rent. He told her vague details about business stuff and investments, which she assumed meant he came from money but didn't like talking about it. "I've been in meetings all morning," he said, "and I haven't laughed once until now." She looked down at her half-eaten spaghetti. "That's sad." "No," he said, "that's you." Her heart gave a stupid little lurch. She dropped her fork. "You're ridiculous. You're beautiful." She blinked. "That escalated," he smiled. "True things usually do." Over the next week, they saw each other 3 more times, once at a bookstore, where he bought her every novel she picked up without asking the price. Once at her rooftop bar, where he ordered her favorite drink before she even said it, gin and tonic with lime. And once in Central Park, where they sat on a bench and talked until the sun went down and her fingers were too cold to hold her coffee. Each time, Ford opened up more. Not about his money, he still played that close to the chest, but about his life. How he'd grown up in Manhattan, how he barely saw his dad as a kid, how he built his first company before he was 25. She didn't press. Honestly, she didn't want to know too much. Because the more she found out, the more dangerous it felt, and yet she couldn't stop seeing him. She liked how he made her laugh, how he looked at her like she mattered, how he asked questions and actually listened. but she still had no idea who he really was. That changed the night he picked her up in a black car with a driver wearing a jacket that probably cost more than her month's rent. "I thought we were grabbing Thai," she said, staring at the sleek car. "We are," he said. "In Bangkok," she blinked. "What?" He opened the door. "We leave in 20 minutes, private jet." She stared at him. "Are you being serious right now? Dead serious? Are you insane?" He tilted his head. "Little bit." She shook her head, heart pounding. "Ford, who the hell are you?" He didn't answer right away, just held her gaze. Finally, he said, "I'm Ford Bishop. I own Bishop Industries. I'm a billionaire." She just stared. "And I'm falling for you," he added, softer this time. Nola stepped back like the words had slapped her. This isn't real," she whispered. "It is for me." She stared at him, her heart thudding in her ears. "I'm just a freelance designer who can barely afford her subway pass," she said. "You're what, flying to Thailand for dinner?" He stepped forward. "I don't care about that." "I care about you." She shook her head, overwhelmed, angry, flustered. "You should have told me. I didn't want money to be the first thing you saw, and now it's the only thing I can see." He blinked, hurt flashing in his eyes. She turned around. "Nola." She didn't stop. "Nola, don't walk away." But she already had. Nola didn't cry until she was inside her apartment, alone, sitting on the edge of her mattress with her coat still on. Her hands trembled as she pulled off her boots, one after the other, and dropped them onto the warped floorboards with a hollow thud. She had no idea how long she sat there, staring at the wall, but the city outside her window didn't pause for heartbreak. Somewhere below, a siren wailed. Someone shouted. A dog barked. Life went on, but inside her chest, everything had stopped. She hadn't eaten since lunch, but food felt pointless. Sleep wouldn't come either, not with his voice still echoing in her head. "I'm Ford Bishop. I own Bishop Industries." The name hadn't clicked at first. But after she got home, she typed it into her cracked laptop, expecting to see a LinkedIn profile. Instead, she found articles. Too many to count: Forbes, The Times, Business Insider, Boardroom Prodigy, Real Estate Magnate, CEO, Billionaire. And there she'd been, sitting across from him in a booth with a wobbly leg, telling him about her bounced checks and missed invoices. He hadn't laughed, he hadn't judged, but he also hadn't told her the truth. She hadn't answered any of his calls, not the first, not the second, not the sixth. Eventually they stopped, or maybe her phone just died. She didn't check. The next 3 days passed in a fog. She worked, sort of, opened her laptop, closed it again. Answered emails, but only the ones that didn't require smiling. She didn't tell anyone. Not because she wanted to protect him, she wasn't sure she could even look at him again, but because saying it out loud made it real. On the 4th day, her doorbell rang. No one ever came to her apartment. Delivery guys left things downstairs. Friends texted before showing up. She crept to the peephole, heart hammering, and stepped back when she saw the man outside, not Ford, someone older in a dark overcoat, holding a long rectangular package wrapped in navy paper. He spoke the moment she opened the door. "Miss Dempsey?" "Yes, I was asked to deliver this to you." Personally, she hesitated. "By who?" He didn't answer, just handed her the box, nodded once, and turned back down the hallway. She closed the door and stared at the package. It was too heavy to be flowers, too flat to be clothing. She peeled back the paper slowly, fingertips tingling. Inside was a painting, framed, abstract, bold strokes of red and gold layered like a storm captured mid-motion. She recognized it immediately. It was the one she'd admired through the gallery window last month, the one she couldn't afford to even ask about. There was a note tucked behind the frame. "I saw the way you looked at it. You deserve things that move you, no name." Just that. Her hands tightened around the edge of the frame. He didn't just remember, he acted, quietly, without expectation. But that didn't erase the lie. That evening, she took a long walk. Past the bakery that burned their croissants, past the subway entrance she avoided after dark. She ended up outside a building she hadn't meant to approach, a stark black tower with mirrored glass and a marble lobby where no one made eye contact. She stared up at it, jaw clenched. It was his headquarters. She didn't know exactly what she'd planned to do: storm into the elevator, demand an explanation, throw the painting at his assistant. She never made it inside. Instead, she turned and kept walking until her legs ached and her breath came in clouds. When she finally got back to her building, a figure was leaning against the steps, not a driver, not a delivery man. Ford, his coat was open, shirt wrinkled, tie gone. He looked like he hadn't slept. "I didn't know where else to go," he said, voice low. She didn't move. "I wanted to give you space. I thought if I kept pushing, I'd lose you for good, but not doing anything felt worse." "You lied to me," she said, her voice flat. He nodded. "I did. I don't care that you're rich, Ford. I care that you kept it from me while pretending to be someone else." "I wasn't pretending." He stepped closer. "When I was with you, I wasn't the guy with the jet or the board meetings. I was just me. I haven't been just me in a long time." She folded her arms. "Do you always surprise women with international dinner plans when you get nervous?" "No," he exhaled. "You're the first person who's made me nervous in years." Her chest twisted. "I should have told you the truth the night we met," he continued, "but I was selfish. I didn't want to watch your face change. I didn't want it to stop being real. And now I know it was never real if I couldn't be honest." She looked at him for a long time. At the tension in his jaw, the exhaustion behind his eyes, he wasn't polished tonight. He wasn't composed. He looked wrecked, which meant he was telling the truth. "I don't need your money," she said. "I know. I don't want gifts I didn't ask for. I figured that out. I don't trust people who hide things from me." He nodded. "Then let me show you who I am when I'm not hiding." She didn't answer, not right away, but she didn't walk away either. Eventually, she said, "One dinner, no planes." He smiled, and this time it wasn't charming or practiced. It was grateful. "I'll pick you up at 7, no drivers." Agreed. She paused at her door. "And Ford?" "Yeah, don't buy the restaurant." He laughed under his breath. Noted. Nola hadn't expected him to show up on time, let alone early, wearing jeans and a black sweater that made him look more like someone's art professor than a billionaire. He stood outside her building with his hands in his pockets. No car, no entourage, no flashy watch. When she stepped out, he studied her for a moment like he was memorizing something he didn't want to forget. "You walked here?" she asked. "I figured I'd earn your trust one step at a time." She narrowed her eyes. "That was dangerously close to a line." He smiled. "Yeah, but you didn't hate it." She rolled her eyes and started down the block. "Where are we going? You'll see." They walked 5 blocks in silence before he stopped in front of a gated building with ironwork shaped like climbing ivy. She turned to him, skeptical. "You promised me no drivers. You didn't say anything about private courtyards." He pushed the gate open, revealing a candlelit garden strung with warm lights and scattered tables. A man behind a small wooden podium greeted them with a nod and led them to a corner table beside a fountain edged in roses. She looked around. "This doesn't feel like a restaurant." He pulled out her chair. "It's not. It's a friend's event space. He owed me a favor. I cashed it in." She sat, cautious. "Why go to all this trouble?" "Because I want tonight to be about you, not the noise, not the job." "Just you." She leaned back, folding her arms. "I still don't know what you want from me. I want to know what you look like when you're not braced for disappointment." She blinked, caught off guard by his honesty. A server appeared with a tray of small plates figs with honey roasted squash, something that looked like handmade flatbread. No menus, no prices. Nola reached for a slice of pear and brie. "You said this wasn't a restaurant." "So what is it?" "It's a space I helped fund for a nonprofit art collective. They host dinners like this to raise money." Quietly, she frowned. "You're involved in art." He poured her water from a glass pitcher filled with lemon slices. "I invest in people who create things worth feeling. I don't always understand it, but I know what moves me." She gestured to the food. "And this," he glanced at the spread. "A chef I met in Italy. She wanted to bring her mother's recipes here but couldn't get funding. I helped her open her first kitchen." Nola looked at him, suspicions softening into something else. "Why haven't I heard of any of this?" "Because I don't put my name on things I don't need credit for." She didn't know how to respond to that. So she bit into the pear and let silence fill the space between them. But it wasn't uncomfortable, just quiet, honest. He broke it first. "You ever think about leaving the city?" She shook her head. "Not really. I'd miss the chaos." "So would I," he said. "But sometimes I wonder what it'd be like to build something slower, somewhere quieter." She tilted her head. "You don't strike me as the slowing down type." "I wasn't until recently." He didn't elaborate. That silence said more than words could. The next course arrived, bowls of something warm and fragrant with hints of thyme. She took a spoonful and her eyes widened. "This tastes like the stew my grandmother used to make," she said quietly. He watched her. "Then it was worth every favor I called in." When the final plate was cleared, she reached for her bag. "Don't," he said. "Tonight's not about paying." I wasn't reaching for my wallet. He looked confused. She pulled a small envelope from her purse and slid it across the table. "It's for you." He picked it up, cautious. "What is it?" "Something you probably haven't gotten in a while." He opened it carefully, revealing a single photograph, grainy. A street mural on a cracked brick wall, vivid colors, a woman dancing beneath a storm, arms outstretched. "I took it last year," she said. "That mural's gone now, painted over, but I remember standing there and thinking how wild it was that something so beautiful could vanish overnight." He looked at the photo, then at her. "Why give this to me?" "Because you don't need more things, Ford. But maybe you need reminders." He stared at the image, his expression unreadable, then he tucked it into his coat pocket like it was something sacred. "Thank you," he said, voice low. She exhaled, unsure why her heart suddenly felt heavier. As they walked back, the streets had quieted. A saxophone played somewhere in the distance, notes floating like ghosts between buildings. At her door, she turned to him. "Tonight was unexpected. I can do unexpected again," he said. She hesitated. "I'm not promising anything. I'm not asking you to." He stepped back, gave her space. But his eyes stayed on hers. "Good night, Nola." She didn't answer right away, just nodded. "Good night, Ford." She closed the door slowly, the sound echoing in the hallway behind her. Then she leaned against it, heart thudding in a rhythm she hadn't felt in years. Outside, Ford stood on the stoop for a long time before walking away, the photo still safe in his pocket. The gallery was quiet when Nola arrived, just the soft echo of heels on polished concrete and the faint hum of a cello playing from hidden speakers. She hesitated just inside the entrance, fingers tightening around the portfolio pressed to her chest. She'd almost turned around twice on the walk over, but this wasn't about Ford, not really. This was about her. The curator had reached out the same morning, said someone had anonymously submitted her work from a small online catalog she'd forgotten she even had. Said they wanted to feature her pieces in a new exhibit highlighting emerging local artists. Said there might even be buyers. She hadn't asked who submitted her. She didn't need to. Her hands were still trembling when she stepped up to the front desk. "I'm Nola Dempsey," she said. "I have an appointment." The woman behind the counter smiled. "They're expecting you upstairs." She took the stairs slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. When she reached the second floor, her breath caught. Her sketches were already framed, mounted, lit from above like they mattered. She walked past each one slowly, portraits, cityscapes, moments she'd captured on park benches and subway seats, all of them alive in a way she'd never seen before. "You didn't tell me you could do this," said a voice behind her. She turned, pulse jumping. Ford stood by the far wall, hands in his coat pockets. He looked out of place among the art like someone who belonged in corner offices and boardrooms, but he was watching her like she was the only thing of value in the room. "I didn't think anyone would care," she said. "I do." She looked away, throat tight. He stepped closer. "I didn't put my name on the submission. I didn't want you thinking I was trying to buy your future. I know it was you. I just wanted someone else to see what I see." She faced him fully, heart beating hard. "You keep showing up. I will until you tell me to stop." She didn't speak for a long time, just looked at him, really looked at the lines under his eyes, at the way he held himself like he was bracing for something. "You scare me," she said quietly. He didn't blink. "Why?" "Because you make me want things I've spent years convincing myself I didn't need." He stepped forward. "Then let me give them to you." "I don't want your money, I know that." His voice was steady, "but I want to give you more than that. I want to build a life with someone who sees the world differently than I do. Someone who doesn't care about headlines or profit margins. Someone who reminded me what it means to feel everything." Her eyes burned. "You don't even know if we'd work." "I know enough to try." She looked down at her hands. "I don't know how to do this." "Then we figure it out together." She let out a breath, shaky and real. "If I say yes, I need you to promise something, anything." You don't hide from me again. Not even the messy parts. He stepped even closer. Then you can't hide either, she nodded. Deal. He reached for her hand, warm, solid, grounding. The gallery faded around them, the lights, the music, the quiet hum of something important beginning. Later that night, he brought her to a rooftop she'd never seen, above a building she hadn't realized was his. There was no one around. Just a table set with candles, a blanket draped over the back of her chair, and a view of the skyline that made her chest ache. As they sat, she traced the rim of her glass with one finger. You planned all this, he looked at her with that same steady gaze. No, I planned something bigger, but then I realized small means more to you, she smiled. You're learning, he leaned in. I'm falling, she froze. Say that again. I'm falling for you, Nola, her heart stuttered, and then finally she let go of the last sliver of fear. I'm falling too. He reached across the table, took her hand, and held it like it was something rare. She didn't need the skyline, or the candles, or the rooftop. She had him, and he had her. Forever started right there. The first time Nola stepped into Ford's penthouse, she paused just beyond the threshold, not because of the sweeping skyline view or the floor-to-ceiling windows that caught every last glint of the afternoon sun, but because of the smell. Cedar, citrus, and something faintly mineral, like clean stone after rain. It wasn't what she expected from a man who owned entire buildings. It was grounding. He watched her from the side, not trying to impress, just waiting. You live in the clouds, she said finally. He reached for her coat without touching her. Only when I want to feel closer to something I can't reach, she arched a brow. That was poetic. I've been reading more lately. She stepped further in, taking in the subtle textures, earth-tone rugs layered over dark wood, paintings that leaned against walls instead of hanging, a single grand piano by the window, untouched but not unloved. She walked to the glass, staring down at a city that never paused. You ever feel like it's all too much, every day? He came to stand beside her, and for a moment they just breathed in sync. She didn't ask how often he brought women here. Somehow she knew the answer. Later, they sat on the floor with takeout containers between them, Szechuan noodles and scallion pancakes from a storefront that hadn't updated its signage since the 80s. He let her steal the last dumpling without protest. You don't eat like a billionaire, she said, licking sauce from her thumb. You don't love like someone afraid to be broken, he replied, voice low. She looked at him sharply. I never said I wasn't. You didn't have to. She set down her chopsticks. I've been trying to figure out what happens next. I'm not used to things going right this long. He leaned back on his palms. So let's make a plan. She gave him a skeptical look. You're a planner only when it matters. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a thin, worn leather notebook. He flipped to the first blank page and handed it to her with a pen. You start, she hesitated. You're serious, completely. She stared at the page. Then wrote in neat block letters, don't implode. He laughed under his breath. Fair. She passed it back, and he added beneath her words, build something that lasts. They traded the notebook back and forth until the page was full. Her, keep my own place. Him, stay out of your way when you need space. Her, no pretending. Him, no performing. Her, make art for me, not for approval. Him, step away from work every Sunday, no exceptions. Her, travel but not to escape. Him, love without keeping score. She looked up at him. That last one might be hard. I didn't say I'd be perfect, only that I'd try. They didn't kiss that night, not because they didn't want to, but because there was something reverent about the quiet, about the way the city lights touched her cheekbones, and the way he looked at her like she was the first moment of peace he'd had in years. Weeks passed. Then months. And slowly, life took on a rhythm neither of them had known they were missing. She kept her apartment, just like she said she would, but she spent more nights at the penthouse than not. Ford rearranged his calendar to make space for art shows and weekend flea markets. Nola started saying yes to commissions she used to turn down. Not because she needed the money, but because something inside her had shifted. She'd begun to believe her work deserved to be seen. They didn't always agree. He liked structure. She liked spontaneity. He kept his closet arranged by shade. She left paintbrushes in mugs of cloudy water across 3 rooms, but they never let the differences become distance. One night, while walking home from dinner, Ford stopped in front of a building with ivy crawling across its face. Nola didn't recognize it until he pulled out a key. "This is for you," she stepped back. "Is this your way of buying me a cottage?" He laughed. "Not quite, it's a renovated brownstone. The top floor's been turned into a studio, skylights, northern exposure. The rest of it's yours if you want it." "I just ask for one room." She stared at him, mouth parting. "You're asking me to live with you. I'm asking you to build a life with me, and if you say no, I'll still love you, but I'll probably show up here every day with coffee until you cave." She pressed a hand to her chest. "This is insane." "Yes," he said, stepping closer, "but it's our kind of insane." She looked up at the building, then at him, then took the key. They moved in together that spring. She painted a mural in the stairwell. He installed a coffee nook beneath the landing. On their first Sunday morning as cohabitants, they danced barefoot in the kitchen to Nina Simone while pancakes burned on the stove. A year later, Ford asked her to marry him not with fireworks or flash, but on a quiet morning in bed, with her hair tangled and his heart wide open. She said yes without hesitation. They married in the same garden where he'd once hosted their first real dinner. There were no photographers, just 50 people who mattered, a string quartet, and the kind of vows that made people cry without shame. He wore no tie. She wore no shoes. But they wore each other like armor. After the ceremony, they didn't rush to a jet or a beach or a private island. Instead, they went home, to their brownstone, to their messy, beautiful shared life. And every morning after, Ford woke up next to her with the same thought: this is what forever feels like. And Nola, wrapped in his arms, finally believed in something that didn't disappear when the moment passed. They never needed perfect, they had real. And that was everything.